Our scripture this morning is Matthew 6:9 through 13. Pray then like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks, Mary Thomas. Throughout the season of Lent, we have been looking at the Lord's Prayer really line by line, just taking one line from it each week, saying that it's, in many ways, all of these different little parts of the Lord's Prayer are like hyperlinks that you can double-click on and really open up the meaning and the depth and the profundity of what is actually being communicated when Jesus says, pray like this. And this morning we come to a little bit of a pivot in the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer really is divided into two parts. If you've noticed, the first half of the Lord's Prayer it's all about God. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, and your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, which is important. The order matters. Jesus is saying when you show up in the presence of God, start with God, his name, his kingdom, his will, because that recalibrates your heart so that when you do talk about your needs and your desires and your wishes, that they're framed appropriately. Your needs do matter. But if you skip over the first part, if you just miss God, then your needs are presented in an anxious way, from an anxious space, rather than a surrendered place, and a place trusting that he's your Father and he can do something about these needs that you're bringing to him. So let's take that pivot and let's look into the start of the second half of the Lord's Prayer, which is, I think really there in verse 11, give us this day our daily bread. If you are willing to pray that prayer, I think it will do four things for you. It does four things for all of us, if you'll let it. To pray that prayer, number one, it exposes our frailty. Number two, it expands our concern. Number three, it teaches us dependence. And number four, it directs our appetites. So that's the roadmap of what we're going to talk about this morning. Those four ideas, and try to unpack it of, if you're willing to pray, give us this day our daily bread. It exposes our frailty, it expands our concern, it teaches us dependence, it directs our appetites. First, what do I mean that it exposes our frailty? Well, just look at the first word of this little petition, give. And if you think about it, it can seem a little rude, especially if you're, a Southerner. It feels impolite, like you're bossing God around. Give me that. God, give me that. And if you are, but it's not a demand. We're not bossing God around. What we're doing is we're just acknowledging our need. We're coming to our Father and we're saying, hey, we need you to provide something for me, for us, that we cannot provide for ourselves. In other words, Christian prayer begins from a position of helplessness, from a position of, I don't have what it takes to get what I really do need. I need you to step in and do something about it. I need you to provide what I can't provide for myself. I just recently watched the latest season of the show Alone, which we've mentioned here at Redeemer before. It's a survival kind of reality TV show, and it's great, super thought-provoking. They have 10 people that they drop in 10 different locations out in the middle of nowhere, and they give them some tools and some supplies, and it's just survive. Fend for yourself, catch food, make a fire, build a home, and the last person standing gets like $500,000. It's amazing. It's very thought-provoking and interesting. But what struck me about this last season is that it doesn't matter how skilled you are as a survivalist, how experienced you are, how clever you are, how smart you are completely at the mercy of your environment. Like if you can make a fishing rod out of a stick, and it's brilliantly designed, but you cannot make the fish come out of the water. You can build this elaborate, crazy trap to try to catch kangaroos, which is what they were doing. But if it doesn't work, you don't eat kangaroo. And so it doesn't matter how good you are, if you can't catch fish or catch an animal, you don't eat protein, you don't eat meat, and you tap out early. If you can't build a fire because it's too wet or too windy, you can't have clean drinking water. If there's a grizzly bear that wants to attack you, you're just sorry. You're in trouble. There's nothing you can do. And so you have these contestants, and they are viscerally aware of this reality. They know that they are not in control. They know that they are at the mercy of their environment in so many ways. That same reality is true for you and for me. But we are just totally out of touch with it because we're modern people. And for a lot of us, our pantries are full of food. And if we want to get somewhere, we just hop in our car and go. And if it's too cold outside, we just stay indoors and turn on the heat and put on a sweater. And we can just live under this illusion that I'm in control of my life. I engineer the outcomes that I want to have happen. And this is why this is why we struggle to pray. Paul Miller, who's this author and speaker, and he said this quote, I put it in your bulletin, but he said, if you are not praying, then you are quietly confident that time, money, and talent are all you need in life. That is a piercing, true sentence. If you're not praying, then you're just quietly confident that this is what you actually need. I just need a little bit more time. I need more money. I need to learn how to do X, Y, or Z. That's what I need. I don't need God. But here's what this means for us. This is why we're talking about it. Is that Christian prayer begins with a recognition of your own helplessness. When you look to God and you say, give, you are living in the reality, and you are admitting to God and to yourself, what I show up as is as someone with need, and I cannot meet all of my own needs. I need you to provide for my needs. There's so much spiritual wisdom in the 12 steps that a lot of recovery groups use. You know what the first step of the 12 is, at least within AA circles? It is this. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Christian prayer in many ways begins the same way. It's you admitting that you are powerless. Your life is unmanageable and you need outside help. This is what I mean, it exposes your frailty. It's you coming to God and say, God, I am frail, I am fragile, I feel vulnerable, I feel out of control, I am scared. I don't know what's gonna happen. I need you to show up. It exposes our frailty, that's the first thing, but there's more. What else this prayer does, is at least if you're willing to pray it, is it also expands our concern. Really, the first whole point is just a meditation on the first word, give, and the second point is really just a meditation on the second word. What's the second word? It's us. Give us. It is not give me this day my daily bread. It's give us, which in other words, what Jesus is doing is he's not only validating that our needs matter, but he's also inviting us to recognize and to see that there are needs that others have too. To recognize that they have other needs as well. The reality is that you and I, we might have plenty to eat. Our fridge might be full, our deep freezer might be full, our pantry might be so full of stuff. There's stuff in there that's expired from 12 years ago and we didn't even know it. The reality is that most of the world does not live like that. Most of the world has no conception of what we get to experience. I looked up some of these statistics. I don't know if you have heard any of these statistics, but they're pretty overwhelming. Did you know 733 million people go hungry each day? 733 million people hungry every day. It's overwhelming. It's crazy. 25,000 people die of starvation every day. Every day that passes, 25,000 people just died from starvation. 10,000 of that number is from hunger. 10,000 of that is children that have died from that 25,000. It's overwhelming. You start to think about the real physical, tangible needs in the world, especially when it comes to food, which, by the way, this is why Jesus told us to pray for bread. Bread has always been humanity's staple diet that for centuries. This is essentially, if you don't have bread, you don't survive. This is about real physical need, not luxury. You're not asking for daily cake or daily tiramisu. This is we need to eat, and our neighbors and our friends and other people in other countries, they need to eat. Martin Luther, who is a famous Protestant reformer, 95 Theses guy, he said to pray this prayer to give us this day our daily bread. He has a fascinating point on this. He says, think about bread. Bread is a human development. It doesn't grow on trees. You can't just go out and grab bread. It has to be engineered and made. And he says, think about what goes into making bread. First of all, you need a field. And a field needs farmers to go out and throw the soil out there and to, do whatever farmers do. Water it and take the weeds out and then to harvest it. But in order to have a field, it also presupposes that you have some sort of government or law enforcement or military that protects the farmers from being able to farm the field. And it presupposes that the law enforcement or the government is a just government, and they're not just going to go in and exploit the field for themselves. So you have the grain that gets harvested, but then it requires a miller, someone who can mill the grain down into flour, which requires, employment. And then once you have the flour, you need a baker who bakes it in an oven, which requires technology and training and education. And then once you have a loaf of bread baked, it requires a merchant, somebody to go out there and to sell it, which requires fair trading practices, and it requires customers, who also presupposes that they then have money, which means that they have jobs, which presupposes that there has to be a functioning economy in place in order for this transaction to even happen. In other words, what Martin Luther is saying is, when you pray, give us our daily bread, you're really praying for a just and prosperous social order. That's interesting. Here's the point, is that when you pray this prayer, don't you see how it starts to expand your concern to not just your needs, my individual needs, but you start to zoom out and you recognize, and it activates your compassion for other people with real physical needs in the world. And it activates your longing for a real, thriving, just social order. And of course, we've said this almost every week, that if you're willing to pray this, then you also need to be willing to live this. To figure out, how do I sync up my actual life into the longing of my heart as I pray for other people's needs? So you see how it expands your care, it expands your compassion? Here's the third thing this prayer does. It teaches us dependence. It teaches us dependence. Give us, what's the next phrase? This day. That's interesting. God, I need you to give me this day what I need, this moment. In other words, what Jesus is doing is he is inviting us into daily, utter dependence and reliance on God. I need you to get me through the next hour. I need daily bread, this day bread. If we're honest, we try to be honest at church. We hate this. We hate asking for daily bread. We don't want daily bread. We want monthly bread. We want yearly bread. We want the dump truck of bread and money backed up to our house and just unloaded on us so that we don't have to need it every single day. We're set. We don't have to trust God anymore as long as we got a year's supply, lifetime supply of bread. I think it's so funny how predictable this human phenomenon is. You know what happens anytime there is a big storm that comes through Memphis or a big snow. You know it. You're giggling. You know what happens. I know what happens. Everyone freaks out and goes to the store and just loads up their cart. You do it. I do it. It's not just us. It's not just Memphis. This is a worldwide human phenomenon. Do you remember COVID? It was. I know it was a while ago. I don't know if you remember. It was this thing that happened a few years ago. But do you remember in the early days of COVID? This is so funny to me that the big thing that everyone wanted, it was freaking out about toilet paper. We all wanted toilet paper. And I remember in those early days when the pandemic really hit and the world ended, we would go to the grocery store and there would be nothing, just empty shelves, no toilet paper, no meat, no eggs, no milk. You just walk through the aisles and it's like, this is really weird and scary. Why do we hoard? Why do we do that? There's a storm coming, why do we go and we stockpile? Because we're afraid. We're afraid that there's not going to be enough for us. And so we desperately take matters into our own hands. And we stockpile and we store so I don't have to need. Of course, when Jesus says, pray, give us this day our daily bread, in the back of his mind, the story that's in the back of his mind is, of course, the story of the Israelites wandering through the wilderness. If you remember the Exodus story, God's people, the Israelites, they're in slavery in Egypt, and God does a rescue operation and busts them out and then sends them into the wilderness for 40 years. And it's not the same kind of wilderness that they drop them into the middle of alone, where it's green and lush and there's kangaroos out there. This is like the surface of the moon. It's barren, it is rock, it is dirt. There is no toilet paper out there, there's no grocery stores out there, there's no water sources out there. And they go into an environment that is inhospitable to sustain human life. And God says, every day I'm going to rain bread on top of you. And you eat your fill, eat whatever you want, and I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. Don't save up, though. Don't store up again for tomorrow. You're going to regret it. It's going to get real nasty real quick. So just trust me. I'll do it again tomorrow. And we hear that story, manna in the wilderness, okay, but just think about that lived experience. These are people that went to bed every night with nothing in their pantry, not really fully knowing if God was going to come through for them tomorrow. Why did God put them through that? He is putting them through a school in which he is training them to release control and to actually trust him to provide for them. He has taken them through a curriculum where they are having to make a shift in their souls from self-dependence to God-dependence. And by the way, if you're a follower of Jesus, that is the school that we are enrolled in as well. It is a lifetime curriculum where every day we are gradually being invited to make that shift in our souls from self-dependence to God-dependence. The growth in the Christian life is not you becoming more independent, needing God less. Growth in the Christian life is recognizing you need him more. I became a Christian when I was 16 years old. I thought at the time my biggest needs in life were my lust and my language. I thought, hey, I need God to come in clean up my thought life and clean up my language. Everything else about my life, great, running smoothly, perfect, I got this. I was on the basketball team, had a group of friends I liked. I drove a Toyota Corolla. I had a 12-disc CD changer in the trunk. I mean, I was doing all right. Just had, I wouldn't have said this at the time. This would not have been the analogy I would have used, but, regardless of this being anachronistic, that I would have said if my life were an operating system, everything's running smoothly, everything's running perfect. There's just a couple of glitches that need to get debugged, and so I became a Christian. God, I need you to help kind of fix these two areas, clean them up, everything else great. I am no longer 16, and I've come to conclude that the whole operating system is compromised. And my prayers these days look like, God, I desperately need you to provide. I need your help in my marriage. I need your help in my job. I need your help with my finances, with my relationships, with my parenting, with my body, with my memory, with my anxiety, with my failings, with my wounds, with my own story. Help. The reason why God wants us to learn to trust him is because he is where life is found. He wants us to trust him more than our 401ks. Life is not found there. He wants us to trust him more than our retirement plan, more than our big financial picture, more than our own intelligence or our personality or our gifts or our ability to talk our way out of situations, our ability to engineer outcomes. He wants us to trust him, and he's going to provide day after day after day, and maybe even take things away day after day after day so that we learn to trust him. When you pray, give us this day our daily bread, you're actually learning to trust God with your actual life, the one you're actually living, not some theoretical, spiritual, the one you're in right now, this present day, trusting him with that. Here's the last thing. I told you there were 4. Give us this day our daily bread, exposes our frailty, expands our concern, teaches us dependence, directs our appetites. The 6th chapter of the Gospel of John is one of my favorites. It's an amazing story. I think there's some funny parts to it, but the story goes, there's this giant crowd that forms to hear Jesus teach. He's kind of gone viral as being known as a good teacher, and all these people, thousands and thousands of people show up to hear him teach. And after a while, Jesus looks at one of his friends, who's one of his disciples, a guy named Philip, and he says, hey, where can we get some food around here so that all of these people can eat lunch? And Philip looks at Jesus and his brain explodes, and he's like, Jesus, there's thousands of people here. If we had $60,000 on us, which we don't, and we went out and got bread, that's not even enough money for every single person to have a bite. What are you talking about? Everybody have lunch. And Jesus sees, a young boy, and he says, what's that kid got? He's like, oh, he's got 5 dinner rolls on him and a couple of sardines. So, all right, why don't you take that, and why don't y'all distribute that amongst the thousands of people that are here? And they go and they do that, and everybody eats, and somehow, miraculously, I don't know how it worked, everybody ate, everybody was stuffed. There were leftovers. And so everybody had lunch. Great. Jesus pieces out. Y'all go in peace. He leaves. He withdraws. He goes to a mountain to go pray. The disciples go on the other side of the sea. The crowds, who knows what they were thinking. Wow, that was amazing. What in the world just happened? The next day, Jesus is with his disciples on the other side of the sea, and this crowd follows him. They go around. They take boats. They meet up back with Jesus. So there's the crowd. There's Jesus. Part 2. And Jesus, when he sees the crowd, he confronts them. He says, you are seeking me not because you understand that I am God in the flesh, that I alone can nourish you and sustain you and provide for you. You just want another free lunch. You're not seeking me, you're seeking what I can do for you. He says, no, believe in me, trust me. And they look at him and they say, why should we believe in you? Which is kind of crazy if you think what just happened. They said, God rained down bread in the wilderness on our ancestors. Can you do that? And Jesus looks at them and says, the true bread that you're looking for is not manna. The true bread is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. In other words, Jesus is now no longer talking about bread. He's talking about himself. They miss it, though. They think he's talking about awesome magic bread. And they look at him and they say this hilarious line, "Sir, give us this bread always." Which I don't know, I don't know why it's funny to me, but they're very polite. "Sir, we want what you're talking about always." And Jesus says to them, "I am the bread from heaven. Whoever comes to me will not go hungry." That is amazing. Jesus is making it crystal clear to these people. Let me tell you what I'm really saying. What you most ultimately need is me. You don't need bread. You don't need another free lunch. What you ultimately need is me. I am life itself. I will give you life. I will sustain you. I will provide you with life. I'm it. In other words, what he's saying is, I am not a spiritual teacher that's just here to kind of make up some religious traditions and pass them on. I'm not here as I'm a guru. I'm going to give you some moral life lessons and show you how to really have good behavior, be a good little boy and good little girl. He is saying, you need me like you need oxygen. What Jesus is offering to them and what Jesus is offering to us is not morals. It's not inspiration. It's not religion. It is life itself. He is offering us everything that we have ever dreamt of. Think about what he's offering. He is offering us forgiveness. That he says, hey, if you are willing to come to me, I will take away all of your guilt and all of your shame. All of the regret that you are haunted by, I remove it. I can remove it. The ways that you have hurt people, all the mistakes you've made, I will wipe it all clean. He offers us forgiveness. He offers us intimacy. He says, you don't have to go through life with this deep core belief that you are on your own any longer. I will be with you. I will be close to you. I will be near to you. And I will never abandon you or forsake you. Jesus offers us belonging. I mean, even as we saw this morning with folks joining, he says, you don't just get me, you get my body, you get a seat at my table. You have people who know your name, you get belonging in my family. Jesus is offering us all of this, hope and purpose and joy and freedom and validation and forgiveness and satisfaction and meaning and freedom. What more could you want? What more do you need? The reality is, you and I will not trust God with our small daily needs unless we are convinced that he has met our ultimate need, our deepest need, our biggest need. And that's where you see it happening at the cross. If Jesus is the true bread, at the cross you see him meeting your deepest need. He who was full becomes empty, so that we who are empty might become full. And he who was whole, he becomes broken, so that we who are broken might become whole. When you see that God was not willing to spare even his own son for your sake, then how could you ever possibly conclude that he's going to hold out on you? He won't hold out on you if he's done this. If he's done the greater thing, he'll take care of the lesser thing. Here's how this works. When you pray, give us this day our daily bread, what you're doing is you're directing your ultimate, deepest appetites, longings, and hunger to find their home in Jesus. What you're saying is, God, I'm asking you to provide for what I think I need. And if you don't come through and if you don't provide for what I think I need, I will still be okay. Because you are what I most ultimately need, and I have you. And that can never be taken away from me. Tony, our musician, in between the two services, said, this is not a prayer that you should pray lightly. And I agree. If you dare to pray it, though, I think those are the 4 things that might begin to happen in your life. So consider that an invitation. Let me pray. Father, thank you that you meet us in our deepest needs, our deepest hungers, our deepest longings. And you are not ashamed of that, but that you point us to the one who can satisfy us, who can ultimately meet us. And so, Father, please meet us in our need, meet us in our hunger. There are so many of us in this room that the needs in our lives that we even are in touch with are just overwhelming, financially and physically and relationally and maritally and otherwise. Father, provide, be our God, give us this day our daily bread. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.